I relished the game from the very start, that game people naively call love. I wasn't looking for anything special when I met Sam, but I instantly knew he would be an exciting addition to my world. He had everything a woman could fall for: good looks, intelligence, and kindness. Most importantly, he had the ability to listen, the capacity to make me feel like I was the center of the universe. In the beginning of our relationship, I was naturally guarded, yet he simply couldn't resist my allure. Yes, my allure, because I knew precisely how to play the various roles people needed from me: the perfect lover, the inspiring friend, the ideal life partner. He loved me because I was everything he wanted and needed. But the truth was simple. I loved the way he loved me, not necessarily him. I can't say I didn't enjoy the relationship. In fact, it fueled my self-confidence. The more his needs grew, the more I realized my own power and my ability to control. He became addicted to the world I crafted for him, to the sense of security and love he thought he had found in me. What he didn't know was that I was the only one in control of this world, the hidden force steering this game. As I saw myself basking in success, I started noticing contradictions in his persona. He began to show signs of weariness and fatigue, as if life had drained out of him. Rather than unsettling me, this only heightened my self-regard. I alone had the power to wield this effect on another human being. At this point, I realized the relationship had started to revolve around a new axis, an axis that positioned me at the center of power, a position I could not afford to relinquish. I no longer had the desire to share this center with anyone, even if it was him. Once I realized how enamored he was with me, I saw a broader canvas for manipulation and control. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't overt or direct. It was all meticulously orchestrated. Simply put, he needed something to validate his worth to me. And what better way to affirm that than through promises? I tantalized him with visions of a splendid future, brimming with hope and aspirations. I talked about the trips we would take together, the wonderful life we'd live. He listened passionately and lovingly, looking into my eyes as if glimpsing the sparkle of his future within them. What he didn't understand was that these promises were mere tools to keep him in my orbit, not the fulfillment of a shared dream. The joy he felt gave me a sense of power and supremacy. Watching him delight in those promises, the hope radiating from his eyes only deepened his immersion in my world. The more he admired and devoted himself to me, the more my ability to control and dominate increased. That phase was incredibly exhilarating for me. I felt like an artist, and he was my canvas. Each touch from me altered his composition and impact. Over time, I began to feel bored. The game was no longer as thrilling as it once was. My predictions had become so accurate that I knew his reaction to anything I did. I needed something new, something to stimulate me again. Of course, I showed him none of these feelings. Instead, I employed intrigue as my new tool. I began to hint at things and then withdraw them, give him a glimmer of hope, and then extinguish it. He felt frustrated, but that only made him cling to me more, trying to understand what was happening, striving to be better for me. And every time he reached the brink of despair, I was there to give him some hope again. This time, without promising anything concrete, he clung to hope, which is sometimes all a person needs to continue living in a toxic cycle. Indeed, my game had reached its apex, and I was reveling in every moment. As my game reached its zenith, I felt things beginning to plateau. There was no longer a challenge or a thrill. He did everything I asked of him and more, without hesitation. As my standards and needs escalated, he was there to cater to them. Honestly, he was becoming tedious. So I decided to transition into a new phase, the phase of shocks and decline. I started canceling our plans with vague excuses, hinting at some issues in my life without going into detail. When he would ask, I was always fine, but the tone of my voice conveyed otherwise. While he tried to draw closer, I pushed him away, talking about my need for space and how the timing wasn't right. He had no idea what was going on. All he knew was that something had shifted, and he didn't know how to address it. His hesitation and anxiety grew, exactly as I had anticipated. Yet rather than losing hope, he fervently sought solutions, looking for ways to regain my approval. Unfortunately for him, the more effort he made, the further I retreated. And because I didn't want to completely lose my game, I intermittently injected glimmers of hope. An occasional text message here, a quick phone call there, just enough to keep him clinging to the belief that something could be salvaged. But as I had expected, signs of emotional exhaustion started to show on him. He appeared more downcast, even in moments when he tried to appear cheerful, as if he was hurting but didn't know how to talk about that pain without risking losing me. All of this only augmented my sense of power, reinforcing how effectively I could control him. That feeling of control gave me something indescribable, a sensation that I was on top of the world. At this stage, I knew he was worn out, broken, yet still there, clinging to a flicker of hope, holding on to a vague promise I no longer even remembered. And that was sufficient for me. I knew the end was coming, but I wasn't ready to let him go yet. Why? Because he blamed himself for everything that happened, and that, for me, was the most splendid thing. I didn't have to feel guilty because, in the end, he shielded me from that guilt by directing the blame towards himself. And that was all I ever wanted. As expected, the threads of our relationship began to unravel. But in my heart and mind, I saw only that Sam had failed to keep pace with the tempo I'd set for him. Signs of exhaustion began to show, and the sparkle that was once in his eyes when we first met had dimmed. Naturally, I cast all the blame on him. He lacked the strength and courage to stand beside me, or perhaps he never truly understood the meaning of love. After all those times I'd led him to believe things would get better, that there was light at the end of the tunnel, I started to feel he had become a burden. He was trying, putting in effort, but in my eyes it was never enough. I watched him crumble, watched his vitality and enthusiasm fade, watched him descend into despair and defeat. Yet instead of feeling guilty, I considered it a weakness on his part. He should have been stronger, more appreciative of what I gave him, or so I told myself. As time went on, things grew worse. I even began to feel that he had become a liability to me. My moments with him were characterized by coldness and annoyance, and each time I blamed him. This was my way of dealing with situations, my way of protecting myself. In the end, I decided it was time to put a stop to it all. Without warning or explanation, I left him. There was no room for remorse in my heart. I saw it as his failure, not mine. Sam exited my life, but the impact I'd left on him was evident. I had deeply affected him, yet I continued my life without looking back, convinced I had done the right thing. As for Sam, he's now elsewhere, perhaps trying to find himself again and heal from the wounds of that relationship.